When you hear the name John McEnroe, what's the first thing that pops into your head? Is it the incredible, almost magical touch at the net, a true tennis genius at work? Or is it the explosive on-court arguments, the rackets flying, the arguments that became just as famous as his legendary backhand? Well, today we're diving deep into the career of one of sport's most complicated and honestly most captivating figures.
This right here, this basically captures the entire McEnroe enigma, doesn't it? On one side, you've got the sublime artist, a player with a feel for the game that seriously few have ever matched. But on the other, you have the fiery competitor, a guy whose passion was always, and I mean always, bubbling right at the surface. These two forces lived inside one man, and they really came to define his entire career.
But look, before we get to all the fireworks and the famous outbursts, we have to talk about the numbers. We just have to. Because underneath all that noise and all that drama was a level of dominance that is simply undeniable. The stats, well, they really do speak for themselves.
Let's start with maybe the most important number in all of tennis, 7. That's how many Grand Slam singles titles he won. To win just one is the dream of a lifetime for a pro. McEnroe did it 7 times. Just let that sink in.
And then there's this little number, 9. That's how many Grand Slam doubles titles he racked up. Now this is so important because it shows he wasn't just a solo act. He was also one of the greatest doubles players in the history of the sport. A totally masterful team player when he wanted to be.
How about this for a stat? 170. That is the number of weeks he spent as the undisputed world number 1. Think about what that means. For more than 3 solid years, he was at the absolute top, the pinnacle of a ridiculously competitive global sport. Incredible.
And this chart here shows you where he did his damage. He won 3 titles at Wimbledon on that slick, fast grass, and another 4 at the US Open on those punishing hard courts. So you see, he wasn't just a specialist. His game was versatile enough to master 2 totally different surfaces, and he did it on the sport's biggest stages. So, how did he do all this? Well, it wasn't with brute force, that's for sure. McEnroe's game was a masterclass in finesse and pure tennis IQ. He basically perfected the serve and volley style, always rushing the net with this unbelievable touch. He played tennis like a chess master, always thinking 3 moves ahead of his opponent. Which of course brings us to the central question of his legacy, right? If he was this brilliant, this dominant, this artistic, then why is it that the on-court outbursts are often the first thing people remember? To get that, we have to look at the other side of the coin. Okay, so this is where we dive into that fiery competitor. This was the John McEnroe that TV producers absolutely loved, the one that made him a global cultural icon, way beyond just the world of tennis.
He became absolutely infamous for his temperament. The constant arguments with umpires, we all remember you cannot be serious, the smashed rackets, the raw intensity he brought to every single point. It made him such a polarizing figure. You either loved him or you hated him, but you could not take your eyes off of him.
And his competitive fire was never more obvious than in his epic rivalries. I mean, the 1980 Wimbledon final against the cool as ice Bjorn Borg, it's the perfect example. It was a total clash of styles and personalities, a 5-set thriller for the ages that people still say is one of the greatest matches ever played. Period.
And here's where that contradiction gets even more fascinating. For all his intense, fiery individualism in singles, he also created one of the most dominant doubles partnerships ever with Peter Fleming. It just goes to show that the lone wolf who argued with everyone could also be the perfect synchronized teammate. But the story doesn't just end when he stepped away from the main tour. Not at all. McEnroe has crafted this remarkable second act for himself, making sure his influence on the sport is still felt today.
You can really see his career evolving through 3 different stages. First, of course, he was the revolutionary player. Then he smoothly transitioned into this incredibly sharp-witted 2V analyst. And today, he's really embraced the role of an elder statesman for the entire sport.
Yeah, he took that same passion and that brilliant tactical mind right into the commentary booth, becoming one of the most respected and insightful voices in the game. But he never really left the court either. He's continued to coach, mentor, and even compete on the senior tour, which just proves that the competitive fire, well, it never really goes out.
So we end up right back where we started. He's an icon of both sublime talent and that volcanic temper. Is he the brilliant artist who completely redefined how the game could be played? Or is he the ultimate competitor whose passions sometimes just boiled over? The really fascinating thing about John McEnroe is that his legacy is, and probably will always be, both.